Hi, this is Rebecca from Rebecca's Sewing Corner, and today I wanted to share with you some of the tricks that I use to get a nice hem when I'm hemming the garments that I make. Now, I usually sew for children, for my children, and sometimes for myself. And I found that sometimes my hems weren't very nice or as nice as I'd like them to be. And so these are some of the tricks that I've collected over the years that I've been sewing, and I wanted to share them with you. So the first thing, and I'm going to use this nice little sleeve, which is size cut out for an 8-year-old. The first thing is, it sounds kind of obvious, but you're going to want to cut your fabric and cut the edge that you're going to be hemming accurately. So if you do a hack job, it's really not going to help too much. I prefer to use a rotary cutter, nice and sharp one. There's sharpeners available, so that's one thing you can do, is you can sharpen your rotary cutter blade every so often. Those are, I see those on online, usually in the US, so overseas or whatever, I don't see those very often, at least where I live. So first, accurate cut job on your hemline. Now the second thing is, and you can see this on this sleeve very nicely, is especially when I'm doing a short sleeve, which has quite an angle on the what's going to be the side seam. I like to wing out. Now I do this on my own. I decide that I really want to have that wing, so that when I'm folding back my hem, that it's going to match up a little better with the side seam or with the underarm seam, and I'm not going to have it artificially pulling in. So if you were to cut down straight along this side seam, your hem is actually going to be narrower than what you're hemming onto. And even if you were to cut straight down to that point, it would still be narrower. So I like to put those wings on, even if the pattern doesn't call for it, because it just really helps a lot. Now, the third thing I do in preparation, and I think this is really about preparation and thinking about the hem in advance, is I actually pre-iron the sleeves and the torso, the front and the back pieces, specifically on shirts, before I'm assembling them. Okay, so what does that mean? I have this nice little guide here that I actually made myself. This is out of kind of a paper-like substance. It's washable, so it's steam resistant. You can buy these kinds of things, made out of plastic. Some are made out of cardboard or whatever. You can make your own. I wanted something that was a bit steam resistant, and I didn't want plastic. Now, I chose to make this instead of, I'm going to wander over here to my hook, my rack, instead of using my standard hand ruler, because I found that having a longer edge for things like sleeves, and front and back pieces was just a lot easier to get things lined up with. So I have this. It's a little bit longer, and I really like to have the pre-measured widths. So I have them in half centimeters, and I have mine in full centimeters, just ready to go depending on what I want to do. Now I like to have the 1 inch or the 2.5 centimeter hem. And this is the third thing I do, is I actually pre-iron my hems before I've even assembled them. So even before I've sewn in the sleeve, I try to remember. Sometimes I forget, but I have to do this ironing step before I do the side seams. And by ironing in the flat and by pre-ironing your hem, you're going to get this excellent result. Now I'm going to show you just really quickly, because I've actually already done it on this piece, just ironing over it, okay? And it's just so much easier if it's flat. This was for me when I realized what it brings as an advantage, is that this is a no-brainer. I need to keep doing this. So it's really easy to get your accurately measured hem when you're doing this in the flat. Now, I really like to make sure I give it a good press. Go over it quite a few times without melting your fabric, of course, and make sure you've got a good press in there. So when you get to the assembly of your garment, the press the crease might have relaxed, but when you're putting things together and pinning it together and getting ready then for the seam and then the hem, you'll see that the fabric still remembers that. Now I'm going to put you on hold for a while because I actually do need to sew this all in, and then I'll show you at one point, once I get there, what it actually looks like when I'm trying to get ready to go for my hem. Okay, I'm back from the machine. I put in the sleeves, so they're there, right? And now I just wanted to show you what it looks like when I'm getting ready to put together the side seams. And this is where you already start seeing the advantage of having pre-pressed. Because here you see, you can still see the nice crease, okay? And you have that on both sides of your fabric. And when you're putting your stuff together, you're just going to want to check and make sure that when you put your clips on, that you do that accurately. Now, I like to offset it just a tiny bit, like 1.5 millimeters, with the upper fabric up 1.5 millimeters to my lower fabric, because I know that my serger just pushes my fabric also tiny bit, and I know that when I sew down to the end, that last stretch, that my fabric's just going to end up evenly. And also one of the things you can do is when you put your clips on before serging, you can open up your fabric and you can see. And actually, if you look at this and you can see my two iron creases, this isn't going to really do a good job, right? I'm covering up my seam allowance with the clip, and I'm folding this back. I'm seeing they're going to be offset to each other, and that's not going to look good. So this is also part of the accuracy that you gain by having this pre-ironed and your crease visible for where your hem is going to be. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that clip back off, check one more time, put the clip back on, making sure it's basically stopping at where my seam allowance is, and put it back up, and then I can see, okay, it's spot on, right? And that's what's going to give you more accuracy, because you can check. Now you see it exactly where that crease is going to be, and your fabric is going to want to fold on that crease when you have finished your seam and then are preparing your hem. So like I said in the beginning, hemming is something to premeditate and think about all the way from the beginning. And I'm going to do exactly that same procedure up here with the sleeves. Now it doesn't really matter if you see here that my the wings that I put on are slightly off from where the 2.5 centimeters or the 1 inch hem is going to end up, and that doesn't really matter too much. You can always just serge that off a little bit, or also cut it off. But I'm still going to line my stuff up, grab a little clip here, make sure I'm got it on just about at the seam allowance. I'm putting it on slightly crooked because that's where I'm going to be sewing. I'm going to be sewing in a kind of a V. And you can also open that one up and check and see. And you still see, even if you've waited a day or so, you'll still see that your creases that you've ironed in there, your hem, is going to hit spot on. So I'm going to clip up the rest of these side seams and serge them down, and I'll come back and show you guys my results. Okay, I'm back. So I've serged up my side seams, and I want to share with you what it looks like, first of all, and you should be able to see this relatively nicely, right? So I hit my folds very nicely here, right? And this basically means now all I have to do is just fold the stuff over, put in some pins, which I usually do to hold it tight, or keep things aligned and not slipping around just by accident. And then I press everything one more time. And in addition, I've become a huge fan of clip and flip on my cover stitch hems. Now, in theory, my machine doesn't need it, but I still find that it just gives a sort of a flatter finish. And what I mean by clip and flip is that basically at this crease for my hem, I'm going to clip into my side seam with a fine pair of scissors, making sure I'm not cutting the left needle threads of my seam. And I'm going to cut in exactly at the 2.5 centimeters or the 1 inch mark. Now I usually like to take my guide, and I always take the same guide that I use to make the creases, because you never know, if it's a couple millimeters off, that's not so nice. So I take that guide, turn it around because I am right-handed and I won't be able to do it otherwise. And I measure it up just one more time for accuracy's sake, and I just clip in there. Okay, now that's going to give me just enough play here to flip basically the seams. So when I'm putting the pins in, I've clipped and I flip one side over so that I don't have as much bulk in one spot, and I have the other half of the seam on the other side. Now I like to put a pin in here, right in that seam, and I try to leave that pin in as long as I can when I'm hemming, so that specifically here on the seam section it doesn't shift or move around. Now this is, I pinned it to my ironing board. How convenient. Now it's just really easy. I already have ironed my edge, and this is really nice because this fabric is a pain and it's rolling on me all the time. And I can just go in comfortably, put in my pins. The crease is already there. I'm just following it. Put my pins in. Now I'm not going to clip this just because I don't save time, and I know you guys spend a lot of time watching my videos, and we'll just shorten that up a bit. So, and that's it. So I go around and I pin this stuff down, pin it down, and if the crease is relaxed because it's taken me a while to get to the hem, then I will iron it, steam iron it, press it one more time so that it's really nice and sharp. And then I would take this over to my cover stitch and hem this all up. And there I would use my Lego hack hem guide, which I will link for you in the video so that you can get an idea about how that is and how that gets set up. And that's about it. So I'll show you the results when I finish. And I'm looking forward to a nice hem. Okay, so I'm back. I've done the hem at the bottom of the shirt, and I just wanted to show you a couple of last pointers. Now you can hardly see the needle threads here because this was a border print, so I had to cut it based on that. So that's why you see that the threads have really sunk into, let's say, into the grain of the fabric. Now, what I wanted to still show you was a couple pointers. I always start my hem on the back of my shirt, and I started basically just after the seam where I'm going to have the long stretch in the back to hem first. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. First of all, I start in a bit from the seam, so I really want to start where the presser foot is completely flat. So the back end of the presser foot is not on my seam, it's completely flat. Now, the majority of us know and realize that if we're going over humps and whatever, the machines tend to act up or could act up. So I think it's important that you start where the presser foot's flat. So that's, basically around here. I like to start in the back so that you don't see, let's say from the front, when you overlap your stitches when you're finishing. And I like to start at the, let's see, this is going to be the right-hand seam. so that I have a nice long stretch on the back to sort of get used to, get going, get in the flow before I get to the front, which is what everybody's going to see, or at least you think everybody's going to see, and then it really counts. Okay, so I start in a bit, and I always do the back first. And the good thing about starting in from your seam is that when you're finishing, you also get your presser foot off of that seam and can and finish up your stitches on that stretch. But your presser foot is also flat. So stay away from the seams when you're starting and finishing. Okay. Now I did a 2-needle narrow hem here, and I'm going to open it up and show you what it looks like. Okay. So the accuracy really pays off. Now you got a couple of tiny pieces of fabric hanging out there, and I'll say something about my looper and threads right there in a second. But I paid attention to what I was doing. I didn't do a hack job when I was cutting. I pre-pressed it. I used my Lego hem guide and got, I would say, pretty good results throughout. Just a little tiny flap of fabric here and there. Now I have some, let's say, not so nice looking spots here on my loopers, and I've double checked those, and none of those are skip stitches. What's going on is my spool of thread is on a, it's not a real spool per se. It's one of those cardboard tubes, and it's wobbling a bit, and it's changing the tension on the needle threads every now and then, and you can see that actually in a rather regular interval. Okay, so that's a needle thread issue. It doesn't look so perfect on the back side, but there's no skip stitches, so I'm not going to take it out and do it again. Okay, so that's the hem. You can see it really regular. I've got a nice flat spot here on both of the seams because I did clip and flip, and I think I'm going to have a happy kid soon. So thanks for watching. As I said, I've linked the video for the Lego hem guide, and happy hemming, and hope to see you soon.